Hey, this is Stephanie.
And I'm Nina.
And you're listening to Live by the Spirit podcast. Merry Christmas! And happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
I love NSYNC's Christmas album. It makes me joy-filled. Nina's rolling her eyes
That was
at
the
me.
entrance. It was more the fact that I hit record and we heard the jingle bells in the theme song and her whole face just lit up.
I love Christmas. If you
Couldn't tell.
couldn't tell. I think what's really obvious that I love Christmas is you need to go look at our Live by the Spirit podcast Instagram.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
having so much fun creating content for this month.
Red everywhere.
Red everywhere. We changed our color to red.
Steph changed our color to red.
I did, but
Red is my least favorite color of the rainbow.
But I was thinking about doing green, but our actual color is like a blue green, and I thought that was gonna look too similar. So red was a nice contrast, and it's so holiday-esque. But also, speaking of, a little plug for our Instagram, for the month of December, we are doing every single day. We're doing like a Bible verse Advent calendar. So make sure that you go and check on our Instagram stories every day, and if you want to, you can screenshot it if you like a design and make it your wallpaper. We've been trying to find verses that are, for the season. And I've been working really hard. 25 designs. So fun. So please go look at it because I was spending a lot of time on it.
Steph's like, please just go look at what I'm doing.
Please acknowledge it, please. But it's the greatest time of year. And it's here. Go. Oh, I shouldn't sing. I'm not good. That was an Ali and AJ song.
You sang in the beginning.
I
already.
did. That was an NSYNC song.
And it's going to be uploaded onto the internet to
Yeah.
Spotify.
My dad told me when I was younger, he was like, never audition for American Idol.
Oh my gosh, Paul.
I love my dad. My dad's it's true. I'm not a singer.
He's hilarious.
My dad is awesome. This would be an episode I would have loved to have like him on to talk about his opinion, because he has a lot of opinions on this topic. What is our topic today, Nina?
So our topic is Santa Claus.
Saint Nicholas, Father Christmas, all the names.
What is
Kris Kringle?
I'm thinking of the scene in in the Santa Claus when he's
Oh,
like
yeah,
arrested.
That's what I was thinking of. He was like,
When he's arrested
like,
and he's saying
Bobo Chicho.
Bobo Chicho.
That
So funny.
So we talked about this our last episode, but a tradition that me and my dad have had since that we still carry on is every Christmas Eve we watch the Santa Claus with Tim Allen on Christmas Eve and Santa Claus 2 on Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. And I just love that got brought up, because that to me is so Christmassy. And I'll be talking a little bit about that, because there is one line from that movie I'll go into later on some things, but I love that movie so much.
I do really like that movie. It's on my list of Christmas movies I like to watch every year.
It's so good.
Yeah, I do like that one. I also just like Tim Allen as a human being.
He's awesome. But anyways, I think we're going to have some disagreements in this episode.
No, don't say you think. We know we are going to disagree on this topic.
But
we already know that going into it, but like friendly disagreement.
Yes, and that's okay. And also, I think a big part of it is how we were raised differently on this particular topic, and that's okay.
And also having opinions, kind of like we talked about with the Halloween episode. Everybody's entitled to your own opinion. Everyone's entitled to your own convictions, and this is just where we're standing at the moment. And, I think it also like our own arguments can bring up things for the other, and
Yeah. But I guess we can start with Nina. Nina, did you grow up believing in Santa Claus?
So I don't have a super good long-term memory at all, but I do remember believing in Santa when I was younger. I do remember that being a thing, but also I was talking to my mom about it earlier on the phone, because I was like, hey, what's your take on this? And she was saying, that they never really emphasized Santa at home, which I don't remember either. I feel like I remember majority of it being when I was at school.
Yeah.
And I do remember, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I remember learning about who Saint Nick really was. I remember learning about that at school, and I also remember specifically when I was in kindergarten, Santa coming to school, and I asked him for a stuffed unicorn, and then my father bought me a stuffed unicorn. But like, I remember when we would open presents on Christmas Day, there would be presents from my parents that like said from Dada and Mama, whatever. And then I remember other presents not being labeled on who they were from. And I was just always like, oh, that was Santa. But it was never really emphasized by my parents at all. I remember knowing by like second grade that Santa wasn't real. Like what? I was like 7 or 8 or something.
Wow. I was way later in life than most people.
Wait, what age?
I'm going to be honest with you. Probably like 6th grade.
Shut up.
5th or 6th grade.
No way.
And I will explain.
So you were like 10 to 12.
Yeah, and I was still believe because I was like, my parents don't have the audacity to lie to me. So okay, for me, Santa Claus was a very, very, very big deal in our household. My parents went all out every single year with Santa Claus.
Were you one of those people that had an elf?
The Elf on the Shelf? No, that was after, like, the Elf on the Shelf became a thing when I was like in middle school or high school.
Okay.
Thank God. I am never doing that.
So today, when we're recording this, is December 1st. I walked into school today.
Oh, was there elves?
Mad hysteria because some of my kids were like, is there an elf in your room? There's an elf in my room. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is with the elf?
I'm so happy that was an after thing because that would have petrified me. I think of the video that's all over the internet of like the little kid who like grabbed the elf because the kids aren't supposed to touch the elf.
You're not allowed to touch the elf.
Like, Santa's not coming though.
Oh yeah, one of my kids already touched the elf today.
Oh gosh. But anyways, no, we didn't do the elf, but it was a very big deal in our house. My parents went all out every single year. Yeah, I've seen that. Showing me memes of the Elf on the Shelf. But my parents went all out every single year. I feel so more my mom than my dad. But yeah, I mean, what was really awesome about my growing up is that I lived on a ranch. So we had horses and donkeys and everything. And I'm such an animal lover. So every year I would leave carrots out. And my father... also, I made it really easy on my parents because I would like to say that I had some common sense as a child. And even though I loved Santa Claus, it was nerve-wracking that a random stranger was breaking into our house once a year and we were okay with it. So I always made my dad sleep in the living room as protection and I would sleep in my parents' room with my mom. Talk about making it easy on my dad. Literally, I like made it so easy for him. But my dad would take the carrots and give it to the horses to nibble on. So there'd be real nibbles. So I thought like, wow, Santa actually gave the horse
his reindeer.
And then my mom and I would make the
reindeer dust.
The reindeer dust.
My grandma would give it to us, and even after we didn't even believe, my grandma would give it to us, and we'd sprinkle it.
Yeah,
in the snow.
But every year I'd run outside and I'd get a bell. So it's like, and every year my mom had me write a letter to Santa thanking him for my presents and praying over him and like all this stuff. And it'd be like, I remember the first year I got the bell, it was like, Comet left you a surprise outside because Comet was my favorite reindeer. And so outside, and I have it hanging on my Christmas tree actually in my living room. Oh, that
bell on your Christmas tree?
I have several bells on that Christmas tree out there, but it says Comet and like says like 06 or something like that on it. But yeah, so every year we did that, I'd get a bell from a different reindeer. And I remember one year being like, wow, Santa Claus and Dad have the exact same handwriting. That's crazy.
No, literally.
And like, I always gave him cocoa instead of milk because I wanted it to be different. I was like, he's going to be getting a lot of milk. He needs hot chocolate. It's cold outside.
You wanted to be different.
And then my dad, every year...
Wouldn't it be cold?
No, because we heat it up right before we go to bed.
Oh, okay.
And then I never slept on Christmas. And so, like, I was so excited. And so every year, probably around 1 or 2 a.m., my dad would come and wake me up. And he's like, Santa hit me with that sleeping dust again. And I got knocked out. And I just remember because my dad did that because he wanted to go sleep in his own bed. He's like, let's get Christmas over with.
Oh, my gosh.
And so he'd wake me up around 1 or 2 every single year, and I'd go running down the stairs. And then for us, none of Santa's presents were wrapped. So I knew it was from Santa because it wasn't wrapped and it was just out.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, which if you ever watched the YouTubers called the Shaytards, they did a similar thing with their kids where Santa Claus's gifts were never wrapped because Santa Claus is too busy to wrap presents. You gotta just, anyways, which I kind of liked because it differentiated what was from my family and what was from Santa. And yeah, I remember I got some American Girl dolls from Santa. I got a really cool scooter one year, like an electric scooter. And yeah, I loved it. I need to show you a video. I have a video of me coming downstairs screaming my head off one Christmas of just how exciting life was. And then Santa always did my stocking.
Were you one of those people that woke up at the butt crack of dawn to open your presents?
My dad would wake me up at 1 a.m. so we could get Christmas over with.
You would open presents at 1 a.m.?
Yeah.
What?
My dad wanted to sleep in his own bed, so he's like, we're going to do this. We're going to get it over with. So
I thought you were just saying
just the
he
Santa
woke
Claus
you
stuff.
up to see the presents and then you went back to bed.
No, we did everything at that point.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
No, literally, ask my mother.
Uh-huh.
Me and my brothers don't wake up.
Yeah.
We never had Christmas before 8 a.m. Never.
Oh gosh.
Like I'm saying, and also we're not allowed to we're not allowed to go out in the living room and look at our tree and everything because of the pickle on the tree and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not allowed to look at the tree. But I literally, my parents used to have to come and wake us up for Christmas. Like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. We were the polar opposite. Yeah, it was.
We're like the only family that does that because we just like our sleep.
Yeah. Nowadays, I'm obviously an adult. It's like, we'll do breakfast and then do gifts. At this point, I'm an adult, so it's like there's not like a ton going to be opened. But yeah, my dad did it because he wanted to sleep in his own bed. I just thought
Hilarious.
I always just thought it was because my dad finally woke up from the sleeping dust that Santa left and would come and me up to show me that Santa came. But we just did everything. And a lot of times while doing it, we'd watch Santa Claus or something like that. But yeah, well, and it's funny because the older I got, the earlier and earlier Santa would arrive. So I remember when I was really little that he'd come wake me up around 3 or 4 a.m. And we'd just have a really early morning. And then it's just by the last Christmas, I think, that we did Santa Claus, it was probably like midnight. Because my dad was just like at this point. But yeah, and the thing is, I was later in life was when I started questioning it because my parents went all out. I remember asking my dad, I was like on a car ride to school one morning. He said, "Dad, be honest with me. Is Santa Claus real?" And he said, "If we believe in Santa Claus, we get more presents." And to this day, Paul Graydon has never said Santa Claus is not real to me. To this day, he says, if we believe in Santa Claus, we get more presents. So if you ever meet my dad, ask him if Santa Claus is real and he will tell you that.
So when did the tradition of waking up at 4 a.m. stop?
Probably around the time, definitely high school. It had been around the time my mom got super sick. Because like, obviously in middle school, I knew Santa Claus wasn't real, but we were still, and I was like sleeping in my own bed at that point.
Tradition.
It was just like a tradition at that point.
So your dad would wake you up and say, Santa got me with that sleeping dust?
I honestly cannot remember the last Christmas we did Santa. Like, it's hard for me to remember just because my mom getting sick, everything just kind of
it wasn't as important.
Yeah, it just everything kind of just combines together. But yeah, I can't remember the last year that we did it. But
you'd say probably middle school, early high school?
Yeah. Well, and then it's like we started doing, like, at least when it was just my dad and I, there were some Christmases where we honestly just did all the presents before we went to bed on Christmas Eve. Just like, because Christmas was hard for us after we lost my mom. So it was just like finding joy in doing something like that. Yeah. And kind of somewhat keeping a tradition alive. But yeah. So I honestly couldn't tell you when the last time we did Santa. But it was definitely, I knew by that point Santa Claus wasn't real. But Santa, if we believe in Santa, we get more presents.
That is hilarious that your dad said that.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because if you meet Paul, you don't expect him to say something like that.
No,
but then when you know Paul, yeah, and he jokes around with you like he does with me.
My dad's a very logical human being. Like, he won't lie to you. He tells you things straightforward. So, but I kind of want to actually get into that because I had a really long conversation with him a few weeks ago about this actual topic. But I feel like we talked a decent amount about our past with good old Santa Claus. So I want to actually read to you about the real St. Nicholas. We just have a little abbreviation. You should go and do your own research though, because he is awesome. And I grew up believing that this St. Nicholas that I'm about to read to you about is the same Santa Claus. So that my parents would always explain to me who St. Nicholas was, what he did, and be like, this is the same Santa Claus that comes and brings you presents. That's how I was raised to believe of Santa Claus. As with many things in our culture, Santa has his beginnings in a Christian past. As the legends have it, the concept of Santa is rooted in the real St. Nicholas, Bishop of Myria, dated to the 4th century. Nicholas inherited a large amount of money and used much of his fortune to help the poor. Nicholas gave freely to meet the needs of people around him, fulfilling the commands of Christ to aid the poor. After his death, the Catholic Church recognized him as a saint, hence the common American usage of Saint Nick as a substitute for Santa. The red clothing is likely found in the red robes worn by bishops, which, side note, actually, because I'm reading this off of a website, I told Nina this earlier. The reason why we see Santa Claus in red is because in 1931, Coca-Cola bought the rights to Santa Claus, or like something around that line, or the rights of his like imagery for promotion, and that is why Santa's in red, because obviously Coca-Cola's main color is red.
This is so funny.
Nina didn't know that.
I didn't know that until like 10 minutes ago.
That was a new fact she learned, but and then the white beard and other things such as reindeer, elves, sleighs are likely adopted from various cultural influences mingled together over the centuries. And so, yeah, and then there's just some other stuff in here. I definitely would say, if you've never studied or read anything about him, he's an awesome guy, and I think just a real true Christian. And my dad read a book one time. I don't remember what the book is. If I'll make sure to ask him so I can say it in another podcast. But this person that wrote this book had a near-death experience and went to heaven, and they said that there's a whole Christmas area in heaven where St. Nicholas is. At least that's what they saw in heaven. So when we get to go to heaven, we get to visit St. Nicholas, and there's like a whole Christmas section. Isn't that cool?
I don't know about that.
Well, my dad will tell you about it. It's really, really interesting because this person had a lot of other things, but I hope that's true. But anyways, he's a really interesting guy. And I think we as Christians should be more like him because we're called to help the poor.
Yes, actually oh no, now the verse is slipping my mind. But it talks about, poor orphans and widows and everything. Like, that's who we should be, called to serve. And yeah, absolutely. I think that I did know that it was based on Saint Nick. I think Saint Nick is I learned probably more like 3rd, 4th grade. We learned about him rather than doing like the fictional version of Santa Claus, which is interesting because I don't know, this the whole concept of who we have as a society made Santa Claus out to be is very interesting.
Yeah. Well, we definitely as a culture have made Christmas more of a like
Hallmark holiday.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of like a good like what was it? There's some movie where they were like talking about Valentine's Day and how it's just a made up holiday made by
the greeting card company.
Was that a Glee episode? I feel like
no,
I don't know, but I feel like Christmas has become that in a sense, and obviously
that's why I said Hallmark holiday.
Yeah, obviously we as Christians know the real true purpose of why we celebrate this, but to the non-Christians, it is like a time of presents and Santa Claus and all of that.
Which is interesting because technically speaking, when we celebrate Christmas as Christians, we're celebrating the birth of Jesus. But technically speaking, his birth would not even be in December.
No.
So I think they range it around October sometime. I think.
My dad knows.
Yeah. I want to say it's maybe around September, October time. But regardless of the fact, this is when we have commercialized the holiday to be. And I think the one thing about, and we can go into now why, like if we would celebrate Santa now, like with our kids, is that technically what we're answering?
Yeah, I think we're separating this into, a few different parts. First part was like our history at Santa, the real Santa, and then like what our take is on Santa Claus and what we will want to do in the future, which this is where Nina and I are going to differ.
Yes. Okay.
Which is fine.
Yeah, which is fine. I think the biggest thing for me is when I have family, don't want to do Santa, specifically for a few different reasons, but I think one of the main ones is because of how commercialized Christmas is. And I think that when we place like the emphasis on, oh, this guy who magically can fly around the world in one night and bring you presents, like that's what it's about. That's where the problem is, because if we associate Christmas with presents, like that becomes the most important thing, because when we can get things. But I think that, you know, when we put our emphasis on, you know, this is when we're celebrating, you know, Jesus's birth, instead of presents being the main focus, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's where our focus should lie when it comes to Christmas. And I know that every year now, I don't remember when we did, I'm assuming we've probably always done this, but I don't know. Before we will open our gifts, we'll read just the birth story out of Luke, you know, and actually different gospel every year, I think, but we read it in Luke last year. But we'll read that and we'll pray beforehand and just really, you know, soak in of what, like, you know, that birth means for us.
And that is what Christmas is about, Charlie Brown.
Yes, Charlie Brown. That is what Christmas is about. Is it about Jesus' birth? And I think that, you know, I think the problem with Christmas nowadays in our society is because we place so much of an emphasis on the gifts. And it's like the biggest gift of all that was ever given to us is Jesus. And so if we're not celebrating that on Christmas, that literal perfect gift that we've been given, you know, if we celebrate all these material things, that's where I see a little bit of an issue. But also I think that there's, you know, a way to do that correctly.
So my dad, I had a serious conversation with my dad about this a few weeks ago, because a good amount of our friends at church do not do Santa with their kids. And so my thing with doing Santa with my kids, I remember telling him, was like, I don't want my children to be the only kids in their friend group that believe in Santa, because then other kids, because they're kids, they're gonna say that there's something about Santa, and then like one of our friends' children's gonna be like, well, Santa Claus isn't real. And I just,
not in like a malicious way, they just
just because they're kids. And so I was telling my dad, like, that's a fear that I have. And my dad posed this to me, and I'm going to try to throw the people that he used not under the bus. But he talked about a few different people, whether they were people in our family or just people that we know who didn't grow up with Santa Claus. And then he said, I grew up doing Santa Claus. You grew up doing Santa Claus. Out of the people that I've listed, who are the ones that are spending their time and devotion to God? You and me, out of the people that he listed. Because something that is so, my dad has taught me since I was little, and I know everyone's going to have their own opinion on this, but I agree with my dad, and obviously I grew up with this, and my dad's done sermons on this before, but an awesome thing to do with kids is to allow them to use their imagination. Because, and I'm going to use the quote from the Santa Claus movie, seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. That is something that as a Christian is such an important motto to have, because with our worldly eyes, we cannot see God, but in our spiritual eyes, we can see God.
Well, also faith is not like we walk by faith, not by sight. So faith has nothing to do with.
Yeah. And it says in Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people will perish. And so all throughout my childhood, my dad encouraged me to have my imagination. Obviously, there'd be some stuff that we would talk about. Like, obviously, I'm not going to have magic powers and different things like that. But he really wanted me to tap into my imagination. And a big part of that was, you know, around Christmas time was believing in Santa Claus and believing in something. And I think I look back at being younger and not necessarily getting fights with kids, but because I believed in Santa Claus, even if a kid one of my friends was telling me Santa Claus wasn't real. I remember one time I had a friend tell me, like when we were in like the second grade, Santa Claus isn't real. Like, you're crazy that you believe in Santa Claus. I was like, no, Santa Claus is real, and I don't care what you say because I know the truth. And like, obviously, when like our quote unquote knowledge of Santa that we believe in isn't real. So I guess then I was wrong. But that kind of attitude I had when I was a kid is childlike faith. And that's what I have nowadays when someone comes up and tells me that God isn't real. I'm like, no, God is real. And I don't like, and you can have your opinion, but I know what is true and I know what is just. And I know that God is real and what he has saved me from. And I think that that was such a valuable lesson that I had. And Charlie even says it in the first Santa Claus, but it's like, just because like, have you ever physically seen $1 million? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And obviously he's talking about Santa Claus, but I really like that line too when we're talking about God and everything. So so for me, I look back at the conversation I did have with my dad about it, because I did ask, I was like, did you not like lying? I mean, because you kind of were lying to me all those years. Like, obviously my dad's like, Santa Claus isn't real. Santa Claus, if we believe in Santa, we get more presents. But my dad was like, he's like, I didn't consider it lying because we were teaching you about a real person who was such a good Christian, who did what he was called to do, which was give to the poor, just like we were too. And that's something we reminded you every year. And he's like, and he also reminded me, he's like, also, we never put Santa above the birth of Jesus. If there's ever a Christmas where we felt like we were doing too many commercialized things and not enough things about God, we stopped it and we immediately brought it back to Jesus. He's like, you were in nativity scenes, you did dances about Jesus. We always read verses out of the Bible. Like every Christmas Eve, my dad would read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, but he also then would read, part of Luke or, this, that, and then some, and just like really obviously establishing the birth of Christ. So for me, all that to say, if I had the choice, because also I know how magical it was for me growing up, I think I'm going to do it. And if I do it, I'm going to pray to God and ask God to guide me in the right ways to do it with my children, because, I don't want them to them to get heartbroken on it. But I look at what my dad said. He's like, you believed in Santa Claus and look at your faith you have in God. He's like, my dad told me this. He's like, the way I see your relationship with God is the way you had a conversation with Santa, a relationship with Santa. You loved him so much, but yet you never saw him. You loved him so much, but you were scared of him too. Just like how we should, we love God, but we should also fear God at the same time. And that to me was so good. And I would love to have my dad eventually at some point do something with us and talk about just the idea of imagination with like into the spirit, because he explains it much better than me, because obviously he studied it longer than I have. But for me, anyways, that's my spiel on Santa Claus. But I do agree. I think we as a society really overemphasize the commercial aspect of Christmas, and that's something that I hope that we change in our relationships. And I think the friendships that we have now in our community, I'm excited to get to do Christmas when we all have kids, because I think we'll have our own special way of doing it too, which I think is really cool. So I just talked for a really long time.
I'm trying to think of the right way to word this question to you without it seeming offensive. Because it's really not. It's just a question I had. Well, also, I do like to emphasize the whole like lying thing, which you did talk about a little bit. And obviously, your dad is very different from most parents, because a lot of parents are not like your dad, which he's trying to get you to exercise your imagination for then you to have faith. So it's different. Yeah. The way that your parents did that.
They were very intentional with how they worded things to me too.
Well, 100%. And I would agree with that. But a lot of parents, when they're doing this, are straight up lying to their kids. Yeah. So that's like my problem with it is like, I don't know how, like, because you want your kids to trust you. So it's like, if I am lying to you, how are you having trust in me when you eventually find out I was lying? So,
Yeah.
well, and so my other question being, do you automatically think, like, I know that based on like what you said, yes, but do you necessarily think that just because somebody doesn't do Santa growing up, their faith isn't going to be as strong?
Absolutely not. I think my dad just used that as an example for me because he knows, like my dad knows how much Santa Claus meant to me growing up. It was like, when I tell you that Christmas time was my favorite time of the year, just because of how, like, I'm going to use the word magical, but I feel like there's no other word to describe it. There was just such a beauty and celebration that my family had during Christmas. It was when we felt the three of us, we felt the closest together, and we did the most amount of stuff together because my dad worked and I had a very close relationship with my mom. So the Christmas time was so amazing to us because it was a time for the three of us to get to spend time together. And I had traditions with just my dad, I had traditions with just my mom, and then we had our traditions together. And so my dad knows. So he opposed the whole like, let's do this scenario about like who's deeper in a relationship with God. That was just because I was telling him like, I just don't know, like I want to do it, but I also don't know the right way to go about it. And so he was just like telling me, he's like, I'm just, because of now how am I gonna word this, because of, you know, he told me, he's like, the way I see you having a relationship with God was how you had a relationship with Santa, except God is like, obviously our Santa Claus is not real, even though St. Nicholas was, but like he's like,
the way that we've commercialized Santa and the way that most of us in society
he's not
view him, he is not real.
But he's like, the way you loved Santa is the way you love God, even more so, but you have the same childlike faith, you have this and everything that, you know, you do. And he's like, the way you talk about God and get excited about God, he's like, that's how you were with Santa. And it's like, I love that you can look back at that and see almost you practicing that at a young age, because when we're like 5 years old, like, obviously I loved Jesus when I was 5 years old. I loved him very much. I believed in God. I had spiritual gifts at a very young age, but you know, it's different when you're younger, I think, to
well, and we're called to have that childlike faith. We're called to, even as adults, have that faith, because as like you were saying, when you're younger, you automatically are so much more easy to, like, you're so much more quick to trust people.
Yeah.
So for you to have faith in God and trust in God at such a young age, like, we're supposed to have that now. Trust without even worrying about anything else.
I think how I viewed Santa Claus was a good practice run for me, honestly, and how I should have a relationship with God and how I should have faith. Like every Christmas when I wrote my letter to Santa, or I did my email, because we were in the tech age by that point.
my email to
Santa Claus.
No way.
I would tell Santa what I wanted, and I had faith that he was going to give it to me. I didn't have to, like, I asked it once and I didn't have to it's not like I had to keep writing letters to Santa being like, Lord, I want Kit Kittredge from the American Girl doll for Christmas. It's not like I wrote him like a gajillion letters asking.
You just said
I
Lord
asked
instead of Santa.
Sorry. Jesus, I'm sorry. Santa, I want a Kit Kittredge American Girl doll for Christmas. I sent one letter. That's it. And I had the faith that Santa was going to give me that.
What if he didn't?
He gave it to me.
No, I'm just asking, what do you think would have happened if he didn't?
I don't know. I mean, there's definitely Christmases where I didn't necessarily get what I really wanted, but I got something even better. Like, I'll say that. Or which, wow, look at that. Got something even better than what I originally wanted. Who else does that? Who else does that? Our
More
Lord
than
and Savior.
Ask, think, or imagine.
So yeah, I never had a Christmas growing up. At least I remember where I was disappointed. But I think that was a really good learning lesson for me. And now I look at everything that I did with Santa and I'm like, wow, if I had faith in someone who wasn't real like that, then I need to have that exact faith, if not more so, with our Lord and Savior, who will give me what I desire, and will give me more than I can imagine. And so, yeah, but anyways, I want to make sure, obviously, like Nina was saying, that I don't think if you didn't do Santa Claus growing up that you cannot have a good relationship with Christ.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
But I think that definitely if you are a Christian and you are going to do Santa, I definitely think, like you were saying, there is a right way to go about that. Mm-hmm. And there's a right way to prioritize, what Christmas is actually about, and also having that other aspect into it. I think, you know, as Christians, that should be our main focus, is making sure that Christmas is about the birth of Jesus. And I know that you are going to do that with your kids. Like, I don't have a doubt that you won't. So I think that, like you were saying, there's definitely a right way to go about it, and then there's a wrong way to go about it.
And I mean,
do Santa.
The simple answer to anyone's question is whether or not you should do Santa is you should ask God.
Yeah. It's all up to your own convictions and what you believe.
Well, it's also everyone's different. Everyone
100%.
learns differently. And so for me, when my parents had me, they knew by asking God that they needed to do Santa with me. And now I look back and I'm grateful because of everything about kind of like, again, how I tapped into my imagination through that time. And I can look now and be like, wow, that was a really nice practice run for me to believe in something that I can't see. And now I've never been closer with God before in my entire life. I've gone through really hard things in my life, but the Lord is always with me. And so, yeah, but again, everyone's going to be different on it, and every kid's different. So it's just, I think, and also like, it's ultimately we have to figure out like, what does our partner want to do? Like whoever I get married to, they may really be like, hey, it's awesome that you had this great childhood, like with Santa, but like, I don't know if I want to do it. Like, we need to have a conversation, see how we're going to figure out, and we're going to do this right.
Yeah.
And like, my sister didn't do it with her kids, and her kids are very active in their church and everything. So again, like I said, it doesn't, you know, not like saying that you can't do it, but,
and I think it's also like, just like when we all have different traditions, you know, growing up when it comes to different holidays. And so it's like, just like any other tradition, this might be a tradition you carry on. It might not be, you know?
Yeah.
It's not something that you're required to do, but if you want to do it and, you know, you're seeking God and, you know, discernment in that, you know, that is what we should be doing.
And I think also, like, you know, my hope is that if that's what I do and I do Santa, it's that, you know, my friends around me are like, okay, if that's what you feel called to do, we're going to make sure our kids don't ruin it for your kids.
I'm going to have my child walk up to your child one day and be like, Santa's not real.
Then you and I will know. My friends.
Just kidding.
You crushed my future children's dreams. Gosh. No, but that's seriously,
so
that is a point that was my original point with my dad. It was like, just because all of our friends that we have, none of them are doing it right now, which is, again, totally fine. All of our friends that we have all go to church. So it's like, again, they're all living very, you know, great, you know, in Christ and everything like that. But I hope I didn't offend anybody by what I said about the imagination.
No, that's why I wanted to ask that, so that way it was made clear.
Yeah, and again, but I think that, again, I think my overall point, which I've said a few times, is just like, that was a great exercise in believing in something that's not physical, like that you can't see. It's just so funny to me, like all the parallels that I have with Santa. I was terrified of Santa. I was terrified of actually physically meeting Santa. Every time I met Santa in person, I had a panic attack and be crying. I was so scared of him. And it's like, that's how, when we get into the presence of God, like, think of all the times, like when Gabriel came down and met Mary, it says she was afraid. When Gabriel came and saw Joseph was afraid. Like, just because the presence of God can overwhelm you, and it's terrifying. Like, we are supposed to, in a way, fear the Lord.
It is literally says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge.
And isn't that crazy that I had that same experience with Santa Claus? Like, I loved Santa Claus so much, but I was so afraid of him at the same time.
Well, also there's that you better watch out.
You better not cry.
You gotta be careful, because, you know, with Santa, when you're growing up, you're taught that, you know, if you're naughty, he ain't bringing you nothing for Christmas.
That's something that,
so it's a different type of fear, but it's like, you know,
well, I will say my parents,
the fear is reverence,
yeah,
you know, and so we're supposed to be, you know, we're supposed to have this reverence for God.
Yeah, my parents never threw that at me, because I'd hear my friends' parents say that. Well, it's like, well, if you're naughty, Santa's not going to bring you presents. My parents never did that to me. My parents always said, hey, I want you to be the best that you can be for God. And then it's like, the closer you get to Christmas, it's like, obviously it's like, you've been, what more good can you do this year to make Santa Claus happy? What more good can you, and I think that was another great way, because it didn't make me fearful of being bad. Because I think that can be an area where I feel like kids can feel betrayed, is when your parents are like, oh, well, Santa won't bring you presents if you're naughty. Because then that's like, and then when you find out Santa Claus isn't real, it's like, my parents use that as an excuse. I think that's like an area where kids can start to feel a little bit betrayed, in a sense.
Have good behavior, kids.
That yeah,
all around.
But
trust me, I deal with it a lot. Please have good behavior.
But so I think that can be So yeah, and I should have had a little bit more deeper conversation to get more bullet points of exactly how my dad worded things, because obviously that was so long ago. I could only remember like a decent amount of it. But the stories I've learned from Santa or just my experience with that have really grown me in a lot. But anyways, yeah. So it'll be interesting when we have kids.
Yeah.
And we get to experience this in real life.
Come back to this podcast in 10 years when we have kids.
So what does your husband want? Imagine, I'm going to laugh if you get married to someone who wants to do Santa, and then I get married to someone who doesn't want to do Santa.
We're switching husbands then.
For the Christmas season.
It's not wife swap, it's husband swap.
For the Christmas season.
Just for the Christmas season. That's hilarious.
No, but anyways, whatever you decide to do or whatever you grew up with, like, I think again the important thing to know is what is true, and it's that we have a God that loves us, and this time of year
the most perfect gift.
Gave us the most perfect gift. Like, we don't need anything else because we have Jesus, and I think that's the most amazing. And that's been so fun for me this Christmas season, is just because I've known that my entire life.
Yeah, same.
But the Lord has just brought me a new mindset the last month and a half. And it's just like, I don't need anything else but God.
It was so funny. My mom, when I was home for Thanksgiving, was like, so like, what's on your Christmas list? And I was like, I literally could not think of anything. Yeah. And then I could think of like little things that would, make my life easier or something, or like that I'd want. But like, there is nothing else that we need because we have a perfect Heavenly Father. Mm-hmm. And, we have what Jesus did, the perfect, one, we have Jesus born, and then we have the perfect sacrifice.
Yeah. Well,
and so it's like, what else do we need?
Well, it's like, I feel like I'm counting a year being October of last year, like kind of for me, the last year, with all the trials I went through, and the Lord's blessed me so much with so many different things. And it's like, I'm just good. Like, yes, it'd be nice to open something on Christmas morning, but like, even like we were talking about, like, do we do gifts for our friends this year? Like, a lot of us are poor and can't afford it. And it's like, honestly, I'm just grateful that we have each other, and like we can sit and watch a Christmas movie together and go ice skating or whatever. I think that's just been like the biggest blessing the Lord's given me the last few years. It's just the people that I have around me. So I
completely agree.
So yeah. So we're definitely interested to hear what your thoughts are on this topic. Whether or not you're going to want to do it with your kids, or if you have kids. I know a lot of you that are friends already have kids. So it's like, just, what's your take on this? Please reach out to us, whether it's on Instagram or in the reviews on Instagram. We got to look at our Spotify Wrapped.
Oh,
we haven't done that.
Well,
we'll do that, and we'll come back.
My number one
episode.
listened to podcast was
it this one?
Was this podcast?
Mine was not. It was number 2. What? Okay. It's weird for me to listen to myself.
The Glee podcast?
It was the Glee podcast.
Oh my goodness.
I love the Glee. Now we're totally off topic, but I love the.
My third was Jen and Kirsten.
Oh, really?
Podcast with Jen and Kirsten.
I need to look back. I think my last 2 were Bible ones, which
my second one was Becoming Something podcast, and then the Jen and Kirsten.
Oh yeah, but yeah.
So funny.
I'm my train of thought. But anyways, for me, hearing my own voice is weird. And I think because I have to listen to it to edit clips, I had already listened to it on my computer. So it's like I don't have to listen back on Spotify, but it was number 2. I did listen to it a decent amount, but yeah. And the Glee one's nice. I just put it on the background while I'm working sometimes. But anyways, I hope you guys are liking the Christmas episodes. We have some more coming up.
The second one.
I know, but second one. We hope you're liking the Christmas episodes.
Yeah.
So,
and Christmas is on a Monday this year.
I know.
Which is wild.
I don't think we'll have it. Just to let you guys know, I don't think that we will have an episode coming out on Christmas, because I doubt you guys would want to listen to it anyways on Christmas. But
well, most people don't even listen on Mondays, to be honest with you.
That is true.
Some people do, but some people don't. So we might release like a Devo or something, but We've talked about it, so we don't know exactly what we're doing. We might not, might something short.
And
we haven't decided yet.
And we have some big changes coming in January, which will be really exciting.
Oh,
yeah.
I literally had to look at her because I was like, wait, what?
We have some big changes, which I'm hoping, with these big changes, we will have a giveaway around the time.
We have been wanting to do a giveaway.
It's just life's been crazy recently, but we're going to get it done. We promise.
I'm hoping like by the end of January, we're hosting a giveaway.
Like, I'll celebrate it for my birthday.
Like the Steph's birthday giveaway.
Steph's birthday giveaway.
I'm hoping that we'll do something around that time. I'm hopefully timeline wise that'll line up right. But if not, we will do giveaway. And you know what's wild?
What?
That into the new year, it gets us closer to our 1 year anniversary.
I know. It's crazy. It's been almost like 1 year in March. So we're getting there.
It's been over a year since the first time we talked about it.
Oh, yes. But
that was in October. And then we started kind of putting the idea together in February.
Yeah, I know.
And then our first podcast episode came out in April. So
I know. So good.
Wild.
But anyways, sorry, we just rambled for like the last 5-10 minutes. But we love you guys. We hope that you're having a great Christmas season. And we will see you next week with another holiday episode.
Yes, we will.
Hit those jingle bells.
Peace and blessings.